Hi everyone, thank you for joining us today and for taking part in this webinar. As you already know, our subject today is with regards to applications on work permits in Cyprus and employment passes in Singapore, as well as how to obtain a Cyprus passport as investors by exception. More specifically, this seminar is comprised of 3 parts. I shall take you through the process of applying for work permits for third country nationals for the first part. Then we will see the process of obtaining a Singapore employment pass. And finally, for the third part, we will see how one can apply for a Cyprus citizenship through investments. Starting first with Cyprus work permits, let's go and see all the criteria that is required for obtaining a work permit as a third country national. So for this section, we will see what makes a company eligible or how to become eligible in order to employ a third country national in Cyprus. When the company falls under the eligibility criteria, we shall see the process to register a company at a civil registration and migration department. We will further see how employees are classified for work permit purposes. Finally, I shall take you through the process as to how to register an employee. So an eligible company is a company that is considered to have the majority of its shareholders being non-European Union nationals, which means all shareholders will be third country nationals, and this includes shareholders whose ultimate owners are foreign companies. Moreover, in the case where the percentage of the foreign participation in the share capital of a company is equal or below the 50% of the total share capital, this percentage should represent an amount equal or higher to 171,000 euros in order for a company to be considered eligible to apply for obtaining third country nationals and becoming a company of foreign interest. So in the case where the eligible company is new, meaning that it is the first time that the company has applied for employment of a third country national, the following are required documents regarding the company, and they must be submitted to the Civil Registry and Migration Department. The corporate documents such as the Certificate of Incorporation, Certificate of Registered Office, Certificate of Directors, and the Certificate of Shareholders, alongside with the Memorandum and Articles of Association, are requested to be submitted. All the corporate documents must be original and stamped by the Registrar of Companies. Also, a profile describing the nature of the company's business and the details of its operations. Thirdly, a list with the names, the full addresses, the passport numbers, and the nationality of the initial shareholders of the applying company are needed. A list of all the company's personnel, including the applicants. A proof of a bank account needs to be provided with the amount of 41,006 euros, and this amount is to ensure that there are enough funds available for the payment of salaries. A domicile deed, title of a lease agreement, or a contract of sale and purchase of the offices in Cyprus is also necessary. And the deposit amount of 171,000 euros, which can be proved by banking documents, including the SWIFT document, to show that the direct foreign capital investment was brought in Cyprus legally from abroad. Once the above documents are submitted and the company is approved by the Migration Department, then the company may apply for the employment of third country nationals in the following positions: executive directors, middle management and key personnel, supporting staff. Now we shall see who is considered to be an executive director, middle management, key personnel, and supporting staff. The term executive directors includes third country nationals registered as consulting directors or partners, general managers of branches and subsidiaries subsidiary foreign companies, or they can be departmental managers. And the maximum number of such executives within the company which is permitted to employ is 5, whereas the minimal acceptable total gross salary for such position for a newly appointed executive director is 46,464 euros per year. Now let's see who can be considered as middle management and key personnel. Middle management staff includes directors who are not considered to be executive directors, as well as other executive middle management staff or other managerial, clerical, or technical personnel with an annual gross salary of 23,232 euros and above. The maximum number of these employees permitted in this category is 10. In the case that the total maximum number needs to be exceeded, the company should be able to justify the necessity of the employment of a third country national, taking into consideration the payment as well as the scope of the company's activities, the proportion of foreigners to Cypriots, and the duration of the company's operations. All third country nationals employed in other professional, managerial, technical, and clerical positions in Cyprus that do not fall under the two aforementioned categories that we just discussed are classified in the remaining supporting staff. Companies are expected to employ Cypriots or European citizens for this category. In the case that there are not any available suitable Cypriots or European citizens with the required qualifications, a company may employ third country nationals in positions of this category after an affirmative decision, either by stamp or contact, is ensured by the Labor Department. Once a company has been approved by the Migration Department, then the company may apply for employment of third country nationals. For first registration of the prospective employee, there are two main ways of application. If the applicant is already in their country, then the work permit issuing is firstly required to be obtained before the arrival of the future employee in Cyprus. Following their arrival, the application process is continued for the registration and issuing is continued for the registration and issuing of the residence permit. Should the applicant be in Cyprus, for example, the applicant has entered Cyprus with a pro visa and the pro visa is valid, then the application process comprises of registration and first temporary permits without the request of issuing any entry permit. This is also valid for Schengen visas. As of August 2014, the physical presence of the applicant is required when registering, something that was not applicable before. In order to obtain the biometric data of the applicant, including fingerprints, a signature, and a photograph for the uniform card to be produced. Let's go and see the important documentation that the applicant must gather for submission, amongst others. The applicant will require, firstly, an original letter of guarantee issued by a bank or cooperative institution of Cyprus with validity of at least 1 year over the required permits for covering possible repatriation expenses. The amount depends on the country of origin. So, for example, somebody comes to Cyprus in 2015, the letter of guarantee should cover them until 2017, even though the contract is valid through to 2016. Secondly, original blood analysis results showing that the third country national does not bear or suffer from HIV, syphilis, hepatitis B and C, and a chest X-ray for tuberculosis is needed. For this criterion, if the applicant is in the country, then they must supply the original results from their country prior to their entrance to Cyprus, and once entering Cyprus, they need to provide the same results from the Republic of Cyprus. Thirdly, an original certificate of clear criminal record from the country of origin. If the applicant resides in a country other than the country of origin, then the certificate should be issued from the country of residence. So, for example, we have a Russian citizen who is residing in Italy. Then the certificate should be issued from Italy as well as their country of origin. Fourthly, a certificate of health insurance for medical care that covers inpatient and outpatient care and transportation of corpse, also known as Plan A in Cyprus, which is also automatically renewable. And lastly, a brief CV and copies of academic qualifications for the applicant are necessary. This is done for justification for the suitability to the position. Below you can see the fees for the applications for the registration as they have changed, and the new fees are what you currently see on your screen. For issuing an entry permits registration and issuing of temporary residence permits, for 1 year it's 270 euros, and for 2 it costs 400. For issuing an entry permit and temporary residence permit, for 1 year, 200, and for 2 years, it is 330. And for issuing a temporary residence permit and registration, for 1 year, again, 200 euros, and 2 years, 330. Prior to submitting any documents to the Migration Department, the following documents must be duly certified prior to submitting any application for a work permit. An original certificate of good character is needed. The original blood analysis results of the candidate are needed. A birth certificate, marriage certificate if it exists, and all their degrees and qualifications. Please note that all these documents will be translated in English or Greek, depending on the company and the organization. So just to clarify on how we can certify the requested documents, there are 2 ways to have a document duly certified. In the cases where the issuing country of the document has signed the 1961 Hague Convention, an apostille is sufficient enough for the document. Otherwise, in order for the document to be accepted, it is required to bear a stamp from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the issuing country. It also needs to have a stamp certified by the diplomatic mission of the country in the Republic, or that is accredited in the Republic. And thirdly, to have the stamp certified by the diplomatic mission of the Republic in the country of origin, or that is accredited in the country of origin. Please note that Russia and Serbia are exempted from the procedure of certification. Documents from China may be certified only from the Ministry of Justice, and there is no need for diplomatic certification. So now let's move on to family reunification for third country nationals. The Civil Registry and Migration Department can authorize the entry and residence in the Republic of the following family members. Following granting of a work permit of the sponsor of the family. The sponsor's spouse, where they must be legally married for over a year, and the spouse must be at least 21 years old. The minor children of the sponsor and of his or her spouse, including any children that were adopted, and any minor children referred above must be below the age of 18 years, and they must be unmarried. The application cost for this is 200 euros. In the case of family reunification, the following documents are necessary to be submitted. The medical examination results of the sponsor's family members, showing that they do not carry either HIV, hepatitis B and C, syphilis, and tuberculosis. Official translations and duly validations of the documents if the examinations are conducted abroad. These are obviously necessary for the documents to be valid. An original bank guarantee for the sponsor's family members. The bank guarantee must be valid for a period of at least 12 months over the foreseen duration of the residence permit to be issued, just like previously mentioned. So, a health insurance policy for the sponsor and his family members. That should include coverage for inpatient and outpatient treatment and transportation, of course, and this is automatically renewed. Certified passports are also needed, and it should be mentioned here that the family members should have passports that are valid for at least 2 years. Otherwise, the procedure for the application becomes more complicated for them. And finally, the documentation regarding the work permit holders, such as the contract, their bank statements, social insurance contributions are also needed. With this slide, we now conclude the process for obtaining work permits in Cyprus, and we are now moving on to the employment passes of Singapore. So now we are going to see how one can apply and obtain a work permit in Singapore, which is also known as the employment pass. As you all know, Singapore is one of the most vibrant business destinations, and it attracts many foreigners looking out for rewarding career options because it is actually integrated and well-developed economy. The Employment Pass, or EP, is the main type of Singapore visa issued to foreign professionals seeking to work in a managerial and executive position, as well as owners and directors of Singapore companies. An employment pass visa enables one to work and live in Singapore and travel in and out of the country freely without being required to apply for Singapore entry visas. The dependents of the employment pass holder can apply for a dependent pass, as we will see later on. The employment pass and dependent pass are obtained by the Ministry of Manpower, also well known in Singapore as MOM. To be eligible, the applicants are assessed based on their salary, qualifications, work experience, nature of jobs, and other factors as determined by the MOM. It is important to mention at this stage that the company to employ the applicant must be incorporated in Singapore. So now let's see in more detail what criteria is required. With regards to the salary criteria, the qualifying monthly salary for young graduates from good institutions is 3,000 Singapore dollars in order to apply for an employment pass, while more experienced candidates do actually require higher salaries in order to be able to qualify. The said acceptable qualifications can include good degrees, professional qualifications, or specialist skills. It should be noted that possessing an acceptable qualification does not automatically guarantee a successful employment pass application, as the applicant may need to satisfy other criteria such as qualifying salary or professional skills. Similarly, applicants who do not possess an acceptable qualification may not necessarily be rejected for an employment pass, as instead the MOM will consider them on a case-by-case basis, which means that those applicants have a proven track record of exceptional skills. Adding to this, it is important to note the following. The chances of approval are higher if the applicant's skill set complements the local workforce and it is being paid at the appropriate local salary. Also, the MOM encourages all employers to extensively use the MOM's online self-assessment tool, also known as the SAT, to help assess whether a candidate meets the employment pass requirements. The online SAT is designed to help employers learn and basically be informed if the applicants of interest are qualified, and they provide the preliminary indication of the likelihood of actually obtaining the respective work passes. So basically, in this case, the employer will know what documents may be missing, what qualifications the applicant is missing. They will know basically what is missing in the person that they wish to require. So maybe they can go for a different candidate, or they can obtain more information from the applicant. The processing time once the application is submitted to the MOM is approximately 5 weeks. Processing time may take longer during peak periods or when any additional information is required after the application has been submitted. Importantly, it is always the employer or an authorized third party that makes the employment pass application submission to the MOM. Employees themselves are not allowed to submit their employment pass application directly to MOM. Another important consideration all employers must bear in mind before applying for employing foreign staff in the newly introduced Fair Consideration Framework. As part of the Fair Consideration Framework, firms that wish to hire foreign staff must first advertise their vacancies on the Jobs Bank administered by the Singapore Workforce Development Agency prior to their application. The advertisement must be open to Singaporeans, comply with the guidelines for unfair employment practices, and the advertisement should run for at least 14 calendar days. This way, employers will have access to a larger pool of potential candidates, and Singaporeans will have a better visibility of job openings. After the advertising period has expired, then the firm can hire the most qualified candidate, regardless of the candidate's nationality. The following are exemptions from advertising requirements we just discussed. Jobs in firms with 25 or fewer employees. Jobs that pay a fixed monthly salary of 12,000 Singaporean dollars and above. Jobs that are to be filled by intra-corporate transferees, referring to those holding senior positions in the organization or have an advanced level of expertise. Or jobs that are necessary for short-term contingencies, meaning employment in Singapore for not more than 1 month. These criteria are exemptions from the company having to advertise for the vacancies, and they can immediately hire a foreigner for the position in their company. Now let's go and see the important documentation requested to be submitted for the application of the employment pass. The employment pass application form. The form must be endorsed with the company's stamp or seal, and it should be signed by the applicant and an authorized officer from the sponsoring company. The applicant's educational documents are needed, which is the diploma or degree qualifications, their transcripts and mark sheets, and this is with regards to India, any transcripts and mark sheets are needed. With regards to China, the certificate of graduation is necessary. Now, applicants who hold non-English documents or certificates are required to submit a copy of the original paper and the official English translation done by translation service providers, high commissions or embassies or a notary public. Please note that the English translation is not required for verification proof of education certificates obtained from China. Also, a latest business profile and business activities is needed for the application. A passport size photograph of the applicant, which is no older than 3 months old, and a personal particulars page of the applicant's passport and travel document. Now, let's see what one can do in the scenario where their application for an employment pass has been rejected. Since the MOM has tightened the criteria for an employment pass to raise the overall quality of the foreign workforce, unfortunately, not every application can be successful. And if you're told that the application has been rejected, then The MOM letter should provide the reasons why the application has been rejected and advise on what is best to do next. Or you can actually look up at the reasons on the Employment Pass online. The MOM website is quite helpful and has a lot of information. MOM actually considers each case carefully before they reject an application, and thus, unless new information is provided, there will be a very low chance of success in the appeal. What is actually suggested by the Ministry of Manpower is to only appeal if the issues of the rejection advise that it can be rectified. One can actually appeal a maximum of 2 times per application, and they must send their appeal within 3 months of the original rejection date. And it should also be noted that appeals take at least 3 weeks, and much longer time is needed if the application was submitted by hard copy. This is approximately 6 weeks. You may also log on to the Employment Pass online to check the status for both online and hard copy appeals. Just to explain this further, if somebody applies for the Employment Pass, and their Employment Pass application has been rejected, for that specific one, they have 2 times available to apply for an appeal. This appeal can be sent 3 months after the rejection has come out. So let's say somebody has been rejected in July. They have until October to apply for an appeal. Now, moving forward, we will see what dependents need and how they can obtain a dependent's pass after an employment pass has been submitted. A dependent holder in Singapore is tied to the status of the main employment pass holder, and as long as the employment pass holder is gainfully employed in Singapore, then the dependent pass holder is eligible to live in the country as well as leave and enter Singapore freely without having to apply for a Singapore visa every time that they want to enter or travel. Any successful employment pass applicants with a fixed monthly salary of a minimum of 4,000 Singaporean dollars and above can apply for a dependent's pass for a legal spouse and unmarried children under the age of 21. Please note that this is different to Cyprus. Cyprus is under 18, whereas Singapore is under 21, but both are for unmarried children. The dependent's pass visa application and supporting documents can be submitted together with the employment pass application or separately at a later time. Just like the employment pass application, the dependent pass application must also be sponsored by the employer of the employment pass holder. If the dependent pass application was submitted together with the employment pass application, then the outcome will be most likely known at the same time. If the dependent pass visa application was filed separately, then the processing time can vary between 1 to 2 weeks, different to the employment pass results. A dependent pass holder is also allowed to work in Singapore by securing a letter of consent from the MOM. It takes about 4 to 6 weeks to receive an outcome from the MOM for any letter of consent. So the letter of consent expires at the same time as the dependent pass expires. The letter of consent is renewed whenever the dependent pass is renewed, and it is again issued by the Ministry of Manpower. The application of Singapore Employment Pass can only be submitted after the incorporation of a company. So if you are a foreign individual who wishes to incorporate a Singapore company and relocate to Singapore, the following needs to be done. You must incorporate your company using a local resident nominee director on a temporary basis until you secure your employment pass. You should apply for your employment pass, and you should transfer the directorship upon securing your work pass. You should also relocate to Singapore and start your own business. Once you have obtained your Singapore employment pass, you can act as a local resident director, subject to compliance of residency requirements in Singapore. The third and last part of this webinar regards to how one can obtain Cypriot citizenship on investors by exception. The government of Cyprus has recently implemented this scheme, aiming to facilitate migrant entrepreneurs and investors who are willing to invest in Cyprus and obtain citizenship. For the scheme of naturalisation of investors by exception, we will firstly see who is eligible to apply, what criteria is required to be met, as well as the terms and conditions, and we will end by briefly explaining the application process. So, who is eligible to apply for such a scheme? Someone who is a non-Cypriot entrepreneur or investor, someone who meets the financial criteria that we will shortly discuss, either personally or through a company, that he participates as a shareholder in, or even as a high-ranking senior manager of a company or many companies. It should be noted that a high-ranking senior manager may apply, provided that he or she receives such a remuneration that generates for the Republic at least 100,000 euros for a 3-year period, and provided that this tax has already been paid or prepaid. The investors or entrepreneurs must fulfill one of the following financial criteria in order to enable them to apply for citizenship. The applicant must have purchased state bonds of the Republic of Cyprus of at least 5 million euros, or the applicant must have purchased financial assets of Cypriot companies or Cypriot organizations in the form of bonds, securities, and many other things of at least 5 million euros. Thirdly, the applicant has the option to make an investment of at least 5 million euros for the purchase of or construction of buildings, or for the construction of other land development projects, such as residential or commercial developments in the tourism sector or other infrastructure projects. Another option is that the applicant may make an investment of at least 5 million euro in the purchase, creation, or participation in businesses or companies that are based and operating in Cyprus. These businesses or companies should evidently have a tangible presence in Cyprus and employ at least 5 Cypriot citizens. The fifth option is where the applicant also has the option to have a personal fixed-term deposit for 3 years in Cyprus in a Cypriot bank for at least 5 million euros. Or the applicant also has the option to combine options 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 together, amounting to at least 5 million euros, which means that basically the applicant can either purchase a certain amount of state bonds of the Republic of Cyprus, they can purchase a certain amount of financial assets of Cypriot companies or Cypriot organizations. They can make a small investment for the purchase or construction of buildings or other land development projects, or they can make an investment in the purchase or creation or participation of businesses and companies that are based and operating in Cyprus. And they can also have fixed-term deposits for a certain amount of years, and in total this should come to the final amount of 5 million euros. As a seventh option, the applicant has incurred impairments in deposits following the 15th of March 2015 in Laiki Bank, amounting to a total of at least 3 million, then he or she may apply, making an additional investment through the criteria 1, 2, 5. So basically, they can choose one of the 5 first criteria that I have mentioned to you, and make additional investments adding up to 5 million, and this is only if they have lost at least 3 million euros after the haircut in Laiki. Finally, the Council of Ministers have the right on special occasions to reduce the above criteria of 124 to 2.5 million euros for investors who can demonstrate that they actually participate in a special collective investment scheme, provided that the total value of the investment is at least 12.5 million. It is important to note that the necessary investments must be concluded during the 3 years prior to the date of the application, and the applicant must retain the respective investments for a period of at least 3 years since the date of naturalization. Periodic inspections can take place where any conditions are being circumvented and the naturalization may be revoked. It should also be noted that taxes, collecting duties are not included in the sum of investments. The terms and conditions of the scheme are also importantly include a presentation of a clear criminal record of the applicant from the country of origin and the country of residence if that differs from the country of origin. Additionally, it should be noted that the applicant's name must not be included on the list of persons whose property is ordered to be frozen within the boundaries of European Union. In the case of all the financial criteria mentioned previously, all applicants must purchase a permanent privately owned residence in the Republic of Cyprus, the purchase of which must be at least 500,000 plus VAT. This is applicable for all aforementioned financial criteria. The real estate can be acquired on the secondary market. In such a case, the VAT is not applicable. Let's briefly have a look at the application process now. The application is submitted to the Ministry of Interior in Cyprus, where the application form called M127 is submitted along with fees of 2,000 euros, as well as the original documents as requested by the Ministry. Please also note that documents issued in another country must be translated and duly certified as discussed before. Once the application is submitted, the examination process begins, where if the applicant meets the criteria and the conditions discussed before, where the minister presents the case to the Council of Ministers for a final decision. Once the application is approved, the Civil Registry and Migration Department issues a certificate of naturalization, following the payment of 5,000 euros, which constitutes the naturalization certificate issuing fee. Provided that such an application is duly submitted and accompanied by all the necessary supporting documentation, and the investor successfully meets the criteria and they have paid the necessary application fee, the time frame for the completion of the process is estimated to be approximately 3 months. In this case, immediate family members of the investor can also apply for the Cypriot citizenship, particularly the spouse and any minor children, as well as financially dependent children between the ages of 18 to 28 years can apply for the citizenship. In this case, it is quite obvious that it is for any children that are above the age of 18 and are currently studying. Therefore, they are still dependent on their parents. The application of the spouse can be submitted concurrently with the application of the main applicant, and upon approval, the application of the children may follow. So this far, the fees for spouses and adult dependents are 2,000 euros for the application and 5,000 euros for the certification issuance per application. The fees for minor children are a total of 80 euros. At this stage, I would like to thank you all for your participation. I shall be answering a few questions now, and should you have any more questions, please feel free to contact us on the following contact information, and any of our colleagues will be glad to help you. Please feel free to send us an email or either contact us via telephone. I now see that we have certain questions that I can quickly answer for you as we are running out of time. And the rest of the questions do need a larger explanation. Therefore, I will be answering them via email. I see here we have a question for the case of family reunification in Cyprus, not the case for applying for residency. The criteria for the spouse, in order to comply and be eligible to apply, they must be 21 years old and above, and they must also be married to the applicant for over a year. Also, for the children, they must be dependents up to 18 years old. Yes, in the case where the registration of third country nationals comes to place for a company of foreign interest, the application for the registration can actually commence once the company has been registered as an eligible employer. Also, I have a question here for the criteria for becoming a Cyprus registered company of foreign interest. The migration department requires the following incorporation documents. They need the certificate of incorporation of the company in Cyprus. They need a certificate of the registered address of the office. They need the certificate of directors and secretaries, a certificate of shareholders, and the memorandum of articles in association, as are mainly requested to be submitted. And also, a side note to this question, all the above documents must be original and stamped by the registrar of companies. Just to add to this question, because there are other documents that are necessary besides the incorporation documents, just to clarify the question, a profile that describes the nature of the company's business and the details of its operation is necessary. A list of the company's personnel, including the person who is applying. A list with all the names and full addresses, passport numbers, and also the nationalities of the initial shareholders of the company that is applying. A provision of a bank account with the amount of 41,006 euros, which is, as previously mentioned, the amount that is available for salaries. So this amount, just to clarify, is for individuals per year. Also, a deed or title or lease agreement or a contract of sale and purchase of the registered offices in Cyprus is necessary. And finally, a deposit amount of 171,000 euros, which can be proved by banking documents. Additionally, with the SWIFT documents to show that direct foreign capital investment has been brought to Cyprus in legal manners from abroad. At this point, I would like to thank you all. For any further questions, please refer to the email you see at the bottom of your screen. Depending on your location, you can contact us on the following numbers. And if you have any further questions with regards to this topic, if there is anything that has been unclear, please feel free to contact us.